Over the past few years, I've been continually shocked by how many people that I encounter who are taking prescription medications for anxiety or panic attacks. And on top of that, I know an awful lot of folks who regularly use marijuana or other illegal drugs, illegal in Missouri, to self-medicate for anxiety and panic attacks. And I've often expressed my confusion about this. What on earth is everyone so anxious about? I mean, other than my personal friends, I understand that I'm a carrier, so I might cause it. But we have challenges in life, but why are there more than 40 million people on prescription medication for anxiety and panic? I just don't get it. But I want to say to all of you, my panicking friends, I apologize. I've not taken your discomfort as seriously as I should have in the past, but everyone in the world is now getting a little taste of what you've been feeling for years, and I understand how awful it is. We know that something possibly deadly is coming down the tracks, but we've been bombarded with so much misinformation and contradictory testimony that many of us are literally nearly paralyzed with fear. And so before we go any further, I just want to share this picture with you. If you don't see it on camera on the live stream, it's a picture of Jettie Mae West, our youngest church member. LaTroy and Camille's newborn, who is in a milk-induced coma in this photograph. I just need for you to remember that even while the restaurants are closed, we're having to avoid getting together anywhere. We have to avoid being close to other people. We have to try to work from home, keep our distance. I just want to remind you that they're still babies and that Jettie Mae don't know nothing about no stinking viruses. And while our lives are severely truncated for the next few months, the sidewalks are still open. Spring is on the way. Tulips and buttercups are pushing through the sod. And most of us are rich in books that we have not read yet. We have movies that we long ago recorded that we've not seen yet. We have delayed fix-up and repair projects in our yards and houses. We have emails we've been meaning to answer and old friends we've been meaning to call. And there are babies who I can tell you are ripe with the smell of new skin and milk. There are dogs and cats. There are old friends. And folks, as serious as things are right now, this too shall pass. The day will come when this is behind us. As the British government advised a population that was about to experience months of bombing and probable invasion just before World War II broke out, keep calm and carry on. We're trying to slow the spread of the COVID-19 virus. But folks, let's be realistic. We're not going to stop it. All of the social distancing, all of the sheltering in place, and even those who are quarantined are not going to do much to keep people from getting the virus. But these measures are vitally important to slow down the spread, to flatten out the peak, so that our medical system is not entirely overwhelmed. And you cannot overestimate the value of that. We need to slow down the number of patients showing up at the hospitals. Based on the experiences of Asia and Europe, it seems that about 5% of the people who come down with the virus will need to be hospitalized. Of those, with the worst case, about half will need to be put on a ventilator. And still, about half of those patients will die. On an individual basis, it can feel kind of reassuring. Even though most of us will eventually get it, only 1 in 20 will need to be hospitalized. The others will tough it out at home. 1 in 40 will need to be on a ventilator. So for the most part, we can be assured that almost all of us will endure this crisis. However, if you look at it from a national plane, the numbers could exceed the casualties that we have experienced in major wars. There have been about 20,000 deaths worldwide so far, but in any realistic appraisal, it's just started. Now, my 31-year-old daughter calls me most days. She is working from home. She had arranged to work from home before the virus started, so she's already in a good position to stay employed and to stay safe. But as for most of us, she is terribly stressed out, and she keeps saying to me, "Dad, I've never been through anything like this," which is obviously true because no one alive today has ever been through anything like this. Unless you're over 100 years old and were around for the Spanish flu, but even those people have no conscious memory of it. We're all experiencing this for the first time. We're all afraid, and we're all confused. We're going through the 21st century's version of the Spanish flu, and that may be complicated by a 21st century version of the Great Economic Depression, all of which complicates our anxieties. There's a lovely passage in Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring in which the hobbit Frodo is telling the wizard Gandalf that he just wishes that these days had come to another generation. Gandalf wisely replies, "So do I. So do all who see such times. But that is not for us to decide. What we have to decide is what we are going to do with what has been given to us. We are in an existential moment, and we have to decide who we are and how we're going to behave. None of us would have wished this pandemic on our generation, but responding to it is now the task that has been given to us. As we hunker down for the worst of it to wave over us here in the middle of the United States, and it will in the next week or two or three, please allow me to tell you, at least from my perspective, what our national government should be doing, what our community should be doing, and what we as individuals should be doing. A crisis calls for our national government to open the purse strings to try to meaningfully respond. Whenever a government starts to spend hundreds of billions of dollars, and at this point probably at least $2 trillion, war profiteers show up to find a way to take the lion's share of the spending. They always do, they always have. This has been true through every bit of American history. If you just look at, you could read a very short book by Smedley Butler called War is a Racket, that he simply detailed the number of new millionaires that existed at the end of World War I. You could do the same for the Civil War and World War II. Every time there's a major crisis, at the end of it, there's a lot more nasty rich people, and there's a lot more poor people. It was true after Vietnam. It was true after 9/11. It was true after the crash of 2007 and 2008. At the end of every crisis, there are people who manage to manipulate the crisis to make themselves very wealthy and to impoverish others. That's why our federal government at this point, even though most of us have given up much confidence in their ability to make good decisions, they absolutely must give resources to the unemployed, to the poor, and to the lower middle class. This is really one of my continuing biggest beefs with the Obama administration, that in 2009 they decided to bail out the banks and the car industry rather than to bail out homeowners and car buyers. It's an age-old problem that our Oklahoma philosopher Will Rogers opined about during the Great Depression. He said, the money was all appropriated for the top in hopes that it would trickle down to the needy. President Hoover didn't understand that money trickles up. Give it to the people at the bottom, and the people at the top will have it before night. But it will have at least passed through the hands of the poor fellow. The bailout money in 2009 was used for executive bonuses and stock buybacks, while banks still repossessed the houses of the poor. Though progressives have been losing ground in the primaries, this virus and the simultaneous economic crash are revealing how crucial the ideas were that we progressives have been beating the drum about for years. Imagine how differently this would be taken care of if we already had Medicare for all, if we already had economic stimulus in the form of debt forgiveness for college student loans, and a massive infrastructure push that would provide living wages in new jobs for everyone who's unemployed. You just look at the universal basic income suggestion of Andrew Yang, and if President Trump were to do that, that would be the smartest thing that America's dumbest president could possibly do. Now again, if I were king, and I know you would all like for me to be, but if I were king, I would immediately offer universal health care. I would forgive all student debt. I would make universities tuition free. I would guarantee a job to anyone who wants one, and I would pay every adult American who makes less than $50,000 a year at least a $1,000 a month subsidy, maybe two. And if I had to cut America's military budget by 50% to accomplish that, you know me, I'd do it. And at the end of the year, I would gladly accept the Nobel Peace Prize. Look, folks, I'm younger than Bernie, and you know I'm smarter than Trump. I'm even richer than Pete Buttigieg because I have paid off my student loans. And since we all know how the election is going to go in Missouri this fall, you may as well write my name in. It couldn't hurt. Seriously, the federal government will surely do some of these progressive things. At least they'll do it in piecemeal fashion to help our nation recover from the ravages of this virus. There'll probably be a check that comes to every one of us next month. I think it should come every month forever, but you'll probably get one next month. And while we won't get Medicare for all immediately, we are at least going to get free testing for the virus and unemployment pay if we get it. And that is at least a start. Community-wise, as I was saying last week, there is a moral dividing line between those who think only of themselves and those who are aware that we are all connected. I stood in line this week in a big box store like a Soviet-era distribution point where an employee handed me a package of toilet paper and a package of paper towels. Thankfully, however, I was in the Sam's on the west side rather than the Walmart on the west side of town, where at the time I was getting my toilet paper, a young mother delivered a daughter in the toilet paper aisle at the Walmart. Springfield only gets in the national news for things that happen at Walmart. Sociology professors, Walmart is a petri dish for studying human nature. Still, I shouldn't have to wait on a rope line to have an employee ration out supplies to me. But we know that when they weren't doing that some people would try to wipe out the whole store's supply. Look, people, this whole thing is going to be over one day. It's all going to be over. And when it's over, if you find yourself with a garage full of toilet paper, sanitary wipes, and hand sanitizer, and medical supplies like gloves and masks, then you are exactly what is wrong with America today. Amen. This is a time that calls for nobility. It calls for self-sacrifice. And folks, it calls for intelligent compassion. Make sure that your neighbors are also taken care of. And the way that you do that is by taking no more than what you need so that you can save everything else for your neighbors. Of course, we get a great deal of what we need to do as a society today through practicing social isolation. because that is what will slow the spread of the virus. And it is the most supportive thing that we can do for our overwork and certainly at-risk medical professionals. But isolation does put a burden on all of us, and none of us so much as those who are already struggling with mental illness. For the last year, I've been continually coming back to the theme of social connection. Social connection, vital connections to nature, to a loved one, to family, to friends, and to meaningful work, is the best prevention for suicide. It is also the best treatment for addiction, for depression, and a host of physical ailments such as heart disease, high blood pressure, and even diabetes. But now we're telling people to isolate. And since a lot of mentally ill people end up living alone anyway, we are literally putting people with chronic mental illnesses in solitary confinement. Now, while Vice President Mike Pence has famously disputed that cigarettes are either addictive or harmful, the rest of us who are not morons know differently. But take what you know about smoking and apply that to social isolation. Solid research indicates that loneliness is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day because social isolation is stressful to everyone. But to the mentally ill, you can multiply that effect. People who were having depression, anxiety, or panic attacks before the 24/7 news cycle started screaming at us night and day that the coronavirus is going to start the zombie apocalypse, those people are actually suffering right now, suffering in ways that most of us cannot even imagine. If you know someone who is frightened, who is anxious, who is depressed, call them, FaceTime them, talk to them, encourage them, and tell them some funny stories. I get a lot of very serious phone calls now, and I ask everyone who calls me to tell me something funny before they tell me what they're worried about. You have to consciously decide that you're going to keep some humor in your life. This stuff is serious. It's deadly serious. But even in the most serious of circumstances, it's better to inject some levity. I was recently both moved and entertained by the movie Jojo Rabbit. I didn't expect to be. I was sort of drug along. But the movie makes fun of the anti-Semitism in Germany during the Holocaust. It was simultaneously hilarious while being deeply insightful into one of history's worst nightmares. It was similar to the way in the 1997 film Life is Beautiful, which was set almost entirely in a Nazi death camp, but it showed how a loving father tried to keep his young son distracted and entertained through the Holocaust. It was a Nazi death camp, horrible to be sure, but the character, Guido, brought love, compassion, and comedy into that setting to help his son and everyone else around them to survive. The 18th century Irish poet Thomas Moore said, "The devil, that proud the spirit, cannot endure to be mocked." I think we have to laugh in the face of the virus. The COVID-19 virus can tank the stock market, it can fill our hospital beds, but it cannot take away from us our ability to choose how we're going to react to it. Your family, your neighbors, your pastor need for you to keep trying to cheer them up and encourage them. That is a debt that we owe to each other. And finally, I just want to say a few things about survival on the personal level. This pandemic is a respiratory virus. It spreads primarily through water droplets in the air. That's why we ask people to stay 6 feet away from each other. An infected person is giving off the virus through coughing and breathing, but most of those water droplets drop to the ground in 3 to 4 feet. In spite of our best efforts at coughing into our elbows, most people end up coughing into their hands. That's why we keep telling people to wash their hands regularly and to stop shaking hands. Stop shaking hands forever. We have to come up with a better greeting. And frankly, waving or bowing is better than even elbow bumping. And dear friends, those of you who know me know that I nearly pull a muscle trying not to scream at people who advocate for most of the homeopathic cures that are trumpeted through cartoon-level science. But in the midst of this crisis, let's listen to the real scientists and stop spreading rumors. We need to deal with facts. And it's not just Russian bots planting misinformation in social media. I was having a conversation with a surgeon recently who told me that washing your hands doesn't really do anything to prevent the spread of a virus. Folks, even doctors are not always right, and they're not always scientists. And so far as respiratory stuff goes, neither menthol nor eucalyptus will do the slightest good in clearing your sinuses. They work about the same way that wasabi does. They just make your open sinuses burn and nothing more. And the only essential oil in the world is extra virgin olive oil. You mix it with a little garlic, some balsamic vinegar, you dip your bread in it. It will not kill a virus, but it will make you feel better. Trust me, I've done a lot of field testing on this one. I was asking a store clerk recently when they would be resupplying their sanitizing wipes, and the woman in line behind me chimed in, "Oh, don't worry about those things. Ammonia kills the coronavirus." And I turned and said, "Are you a chemist?" And she said, "No, I'm a housekeeper, but I know about these things." And her son chimed in, "Mom's been on TV 1,000,000 times." Well, folks, ammonia does not kill viruses. It's kind of like having a lucky rabbit's foot in your pocket. That does not bring you luck. Look what it did for the rabbit. Bleach, folks. Bleach kills viruses. The ingredient you're looking for in sanitizing wipes, in sprays, and disinfectants is mostly bleach. So if you can't find the conveniently mixed items that are readily available, put about 1/3 cup of bleach in a gallon of water and use it to wipe down your hard surfaces and your cell phone, which is probably the dirtiest thing that you handle all day long, and your keyboards, your doorknobs, your steering wheel, and faucets and toilet handles. Oh, and if some well-meaning person tells you, as they did me, that bleach does not work in hot water, please allow me to correct them. The opposite is true. It's true enough that you shouldn't store your bleach above 70 degrees, but bleach becomes activated in hot water. Whenever you can, use bleach in the hottest water possible, because people, science. Oh, and one more thing. If you're still thinking about that cleaning lady in line behind me at the Dollar General store, never, never, never mix ammonia with bleach. The combination produces a lethal gas that can kill you in seconds. It would be better for you to go and lick doorknobs in Italy than to mix ammonia with bleach. The other most infected thing that you can touch on a daily basis is currency. So if you handle money, make sure that you wash your hands. And frankly, if you don't mind me taking just a moment here, if you wouldn't mind, take that filthy currency and put it in an envelope and send it to us at Community Christian Church at 4806 East Farm Road, 136, Springfield, Missouri, 65809. Or donate through our website at www.spfccc.org, because our church very well may not survive the loss of donations that we're expecting to experience while our churches are closed to congregations. So help us to survive if you possibly can, because I still want to be here for you, yelling at the Trump administration when this is all over. And remember, friends, wash your hands, use bleach, Remember where your towel is and don't panic.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.